What is going on, everybody, man? King Recon here, yo. So just in case you didn't watch the reaction this week, listen, man, it was insane, all right? My internet gave out like 5 minutes after I finished reading the chapter. Because I was about to go into I was about to do an Afterthoughts that night. I really was. If I would not have been stopped, we were going to do an Afterthoughts that night because there was so many ideas that kept popping up in my mind. And so I apologize to everyone who showed up and to everybody who super chatted. I actually have the 2 super chats up right now. I'm going to be reading them. I apologize once again. I knew my internet was faulty the entire day, and it sucked because it was finals, right? Like I'm in the middle of finals season. And so my internet's been really faulty. And so I was like, man, I really hope this doesn't show itself for the stream. And my internet even went out for like an hour earlier on in the day, and I was like, please, bro, like, come on, man. And so luckily, I was at least able to react to the full chapter, and then my internet gave out. So I'm hoping that for the episode, I'll be okay, you know, and by the time this goes up, we'll find out if that's the case. But let's look at these 2 super chats right here. So the first one comes in from Randy G. Shout out to my dog Randy G with a 20. Just made it to the stream. The end of the chapter made me jump. Keep it up, King. Yo, it made me jump too, man. When I saw that ginormous fist, when he came in, yo, Stampede style, the King Kong gun. Except now it looks like it's gonna be the King NL Rock. Or, you know, it's gonna be like NL Red Rock. Or I don't know, dude. That thing is huge. That thing is huge, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but thank you so much, Randy G. Then we have Halo-sama coming in with a 20. When did this become Luffy versus Kaido's training arc? Kaido is speaking some wisdom right now. True battle of the gods. Oda is the GOAT. 100%. Yo, Kaido was spitting in this chapter, man. Like, on a serious note, carrying off that on the back of that comment, can we speak for a moment to just give some respect to Hyakuju no Kaido? This man was getting pulverized by the go with the coat in Gear 5th. Jump ropes, lightning spears, giant form. I mean, Luffy was doing it all. And even in the midst of that, even in the midst of the most insane and ridiculous ability we have seen up until this point, with Conqueror's coded attacks, Kaido came back and kept hitting him and hitting him and hitting him, even in those chapters. But in this chapter, Kaido was so impressive. First and foremost, going back to chapter 1042, I'll never forget my first initial thought when I saw this man use Future Sight. I was like, yo, the Yonko are built different. The Emperors of the Sea are built different. And so when I saw him utilize Future Sight, I was like, hold up. But in this week's chapter, it really hit. The fact that he was able to dodge lightning when I'm sure that Thunderbolt was coming in at the speed of light, and he was able to use Future Sight to dodge that thing. Because Luffy launched it, he didn't launch it just casually. He flipped, he launched it, then propelled himself with that same bolt of lightning, turned and came back, and Kaido was still going in. His Future Sight was to the point in this chapter where Luffy could not do a single thing. And that's so impressive, bro. That is so impressive because up until this point, we've been told time and time again that Kaido is utilizing his stamina, his energy to keep the island up. And so he's not utilizing the fullest extent of his power on anyone. Out of any boss battle we've seen with the Scabbards, the original Roof Piece against Luffy to this point, but now this is Kaido's, even though he's at his limit, he's just focused on Luffy. And now we're seeing a focused Kaido going up in like Storm against Luffy, and it was so impressive. This entire arc, Kaido has made the case for being the most impressive character shown up until this point in the series. I feel like it's not even a question, considering the amount of stuff that he's done up until this point. Land, sea, or air, you better bet on Hyakuju, unless he's going up against the Go with the Code. You know what I'm saying? I guess he's going to go with the Code. But seriously, land, sea, or air, we have seen the respect put on Kaido's name in this arc. I have never seen someone do what this man's doing right now. It's insane. Especially like here and now within this type of scenario. I mean, you think about the fact that this man has not sat down. He has not gone to the bench. He has been fighting nonstop. Going in and out of hybrid form, and it's like, yo, this is crazy. And so in this week's chapter, when we saw him doing what he did to Luffy, I was so, because it's Gear 5th Luffy, because we've seen just how much he's been going in, especially with 1044, 1045, and 1046, and seeing everything that he was doing. Now, even though Kaido was still holding his own there too, and countering and all that stuff there, but we saw that Luffy still felt like he was in control. And this week's chapter did not feel like Luffy was in control. Until the end of the chapter, we came in with the ginormous fist and like, yo, it's time. It's time. But up until that point, it really felt like Kaido was in complete control, and we got to see the difference. Now we saw that Kaido legit is not using any more of his energy to keep the Flower Capital up. And so we see the difference in Kaido utilizing energy to keep Flower Capital up, or to keep Onigashima up, and utilizing his energy to not keep Onigashima, where it's just focused on Luffy. And we saw that in this week's chapter. On top of that, we got the line with Roger, where he stated that, look at Roger, the way that he was able to just use haki on the seas and still be the king of the pirates. He didn't have a ridiculous fruit, you know. And when I initially saw that line, it was so good because I remember when chapter 1010 dropped and Conqueror's coding was brought up, and Kaido brought up that only the very best, only the greatest on these seas can utilize Conqueror's coding. Right, and it put so much hype on it, immediately elevated both Luffy and Zoro to the next level, right? Where we're like, oh my gosh, these individuals, not only are we already seeing them blossom, but they have the potential to be the absolute greatest on these seas. And so immediately at the time, we were like, yo, Shanks and Mihawk hype. Because if Luffy and Zoro are doing this, and the individuals that both of them are trying to surpass are the quote-unquote haki masters on these seas, then it's like, what in the flying flatliners are Shanks and Mihawk capable of? And they are both individuals that, to our knowledge, have no fruits. They have no fruits. And so it's like, okay, Luffy and Zoro are doing what they did in this arc. Just having learned this, Shanks and Mihawk have to be the most proficient in Conqueror's coding. What are they capable of? And it's like, all of that stuff just had the hype for Shanks, Mihawk, Prime Garp. I'm considering Prime Garp more than likely had Conqueror's coding. So it's like all these individuals of legend, it just hyped them up to the next standards. Roger, Whitebeard, like these individuals that can utilize Conqueror's coding and are very proficient in it, right? And so in this week's chapter, because I remember before we started this arc, we're like, Luffy has to master observation haki, as he was already getting to that point in the Katakuri fight. But he has to master observation haki, Conqueror's haki, and Armament haki in order to take out Kaido. Because this is literally going to be the representation of his will overcoming Kaido the Beast. You know, the visual representation of his will, which is haki, coming out and defeating Kaido. But what was so cool about this is that Oda showcased that Luffy literally needed to use not just Conqueror's coding, he needed to use the most insane ability we've ever seen in Gear 5th with Conqueror's coding to be on the same playing field as Kaido. If that's not hyping up Hyakuju no Kaido, I don't know what is. And I love it. I love it, man, because as somebody who really loves characters that are built up to be these legendary figures, Kaido has lived up to being that. And he's such an awesome character, and then you give this legendary status to him now, and it's like, if Kaido does end up dying in this arc, can you really give him anything else but the stamp of legend? The man has done everything. Everything, bro. He's put up a quadruple double. He hasn't sat down. He's trying to ensure they win when everyone else isn't doing nothing. I mean, they did their thing, but come on now. Kaido's been a solo show for the past like 20 chapters. So it's like, man, Kaido, bro, and I love this dude. When I see my two goats, when I see Luffy and Kaido just throw it down, it's so good. I just love it. And in this week's chapter, we got to see that from Kaido to the fullest extent, man. Where we just saw like the Death Destroyer Thunder Bagu that was filthy, going in and just bringing down the hammer, blast breath, the demolition twister, going in and firing Getsuga Tenshos. We got to see basically his entire arsenal. Now, what I do wonder, heading into next chapter, you know what? I'll talk about that, and then I want to transition over to Momonosuke because I absolutely love that part of the chapter. From here on out, I'm curious because Oda said a long time ago that there's no way that Luffy can defeat Kaido with just simply a punch. Like, he can't punch his way out of the Kaido fight. And so I do wonder, because Luffy said he wants to finish this now, right? And he goes in, he builds up this massive fist, and he's going to punch him through Onigashima down into the Flower Capital. Now, here is my take on this entire situation. I think what we're about to get is one of the most epic and legendary moments that we have ever seen for a finale. And it's ankle-breaking for me because I initially thought that when the lanterns went up, it was going to be Luffy beating Kaido for everyone to see, potentially having him in the same pose as he was, either in the Nika pose, but just a giant Nika pose, or in the same pose they had back in Skypiea, where everyone sees this, right? This massive silhouette that's in the air. Now, it looks more like instead of that, we could get to a scenario where Luffy actually manages to... Kaido cannot escape this punch. He cannot future sight his way out of this punch because it's too big. It hits him, he lands down the Flower Capital. We see Kaido quote-unquote defeated. Luffy also lands down there, out of Gear 5th, so it's Luffy and Kaido down, but both of them stand up for one final round. Because remember, up until this point, we still need the chapter titled Luffy versus Kaido. We still need it. We still need it. And so with that being said, what better way than to have an exhausted Kaido and an exhausted Luffy just throwing down hands in the Flower Capital while we have on top at Onigashima the lanterns lighting up and Momonosuke is holding up the Flower Capital for all the people of Wano to see. The two individuals that are going to carry the future of Wano on their backs, regardless of whether they end up joining the crew, staying here as the Shogun, whatever they end up doing, these two represent the future of Wano. The children of the legends of the past of Wano. The person who came in here and took over and did his thing in Kaido, and Oden, of course, being the legend that he was. Momonosuke and Yamato. They're going to see these two individuals, of course. They're going to have to know that this is Momonosuke. They don't know that Momonosuke is even here, right? They don't even know he's alive. And so we're going to have a situation to where Luffy tells him, like, yo, that's Momonosuke that's holding up the Flower Capital right now. That is Momonosuke that's holding up the Flower Capital. And so with that being said, we might run into a scenario where Luffy's fighting Kaido. We could have one final, whether it's just them boxing, base form boxing with the two of them until one of them falls down, or they manage to get back into their forms, Gear 5th, Drums of Liberation, and awakened Kaido boxing in the Flower Capital while the individuals in the Flower Capital look up with the lanterns and see Momonosuke holding the Flower Capital, cheering him on in his own hour of legends. Because the thing here about that is that once they find out this is Momonosuke, and they see him in dragon form, that's gonna be like, what? Our Momonosuke is a dragon? But they're not gonna have time to think about that. All they're gonna think about is the fact this is Lord Momonosuke back, Odin's son, here to protect Wano from an incoming crisis, because if that thing lands, everybody's dead. And so they're gonna be cheering on Momonosuke in the same way that they were all cheering on Pops. There for everyone to see, and we could potentially have a climax of absolute legend with Momonosuke holding up the Flower Capital in his hour of legend with Yamato there with him. And then within the flower, I keep saying holding Flower Capital, holding up Onigashima. While in the Flower Capital, we have Luffy and Kaido finishing their battle. Because the thing is about this punch, I don't think this punch is going to finish the fight. If it does, I mean, knowing Oda, it's going to be in the most epic and grandiose of ways, right? It's going to be absolutely insane. But the thing is, I feel like with Kaido, it legit might have to come down to just the two of them boxing. Just boxing. You know, just straight up until one of them just falls back. Just boxing until one of them dies. Or one of them falls. You know, and that could be a way to showcase the future up here and Luffy taking us into that future down in the Flower Capital. Because if they fight within the Flower Capital, that would be the craziest final stage ever, man. I mean, as someone who loves Japanese types of things, like I think back to my favorite video games or some like Kurosawa movies or whatever, and then you think back to the fact that Oda wants this to be like the ultimate celebration of Japan. What better way? Let's just say they both land on a bridge, or they both land like right in front of the capital itself, like in front of the castle, or they land where Kozuki Castle used to be, you know, wherever it is, just to be symbolic. And you have them boxing there for the final round, and it's like, man, it's gonna be crazy. A lot of potential possibilities there, but regardless of the way that it goes, we are in for some peak, bro. Because we're gonna get an incredible moment with Momonosuke. Now, let me just talk about Momonosuke for a second, because this week's chapter really made me realize just how much I care about Momonosuke and Kinemon. Because Kinemon, up until this point, it's not even close. He's my favorite scabbard. And it is due to the amount of time we've had with him, but he's had so many incredible moments within this arc. And for him to have this moment within the flashback, and for Momonosuke to also have his moment where he had to make a decision, and he made it, and that's the reason. Kinemon crying out, Momonosuke obviously being the one to make the decision, made the decision to go out into the future and do what needs to be done. He made that decision. So even at his most cowardice, even at his weakest, he still made a very strong decision that propelled him into this moment. And I love that so much, man. Momonosuke is such a goated character. Such an amazing character arc. And I can't wait to see the culmination, the peak of that character journey taking place here, as he does something that only he can do. No one else can do this. No one else has this ability to become a dragon and hold up Onigashima. This is something that only Momonosuke can do. And because it's something that only he can do, he has to do it. And it's going to be incredible. And I can't wait to see when he finishes doing the deed and Kaido's finished. He brings down Onigashima safely onto the ground, and they're able to have a moment, or even, I don't know, Onigashima could crash, but I'm going to assume that Momonosuke is going to have this Hour of Legend where he keeps it up, with Yamato protecting him, because of course somebody's probably going to try to attack Momonosuke. Yamato's going to be there to protect him. So we're going to have a moment to where everyone's cheering on Momo, and potentially brings down, or all that happens as the dawn is rising in the background. Like, who knows, man? We legit could have Luffy and Kaido boxing until dawn. And you just have the sun rising as one of them falls on their back, you know, and then Momonosuke finally bringing it down safely to where everyone's like, we won! You know, like, it's going to be a crazy moment. It's going to be a crazy moment. And so Momonosuke holding it down the thing over there on Onigashima, that's going to be such an incredible moment, man. When he manages to finish that, when he managed to actually successfully hold up Onigashima to where it doesn't fall down on the Flower Capital, like, that's going to be one of the greatest moments, man, in this entire arc. Just knowing, just following Momonosuke's journey up until this point, the build-up, right, to him having this moment where everyone recognizes him as being Momonosuke. And then whenever he gets out of the dragon form, when we see the way that he looks now, it's going to be like, oh, man. You know, not only does he resemble Odin in terms of his determination and his ability to have the courage to be able to do this, but now he literally does resemble him too, which I'm going to assume that he's going to look exactly like Odin, right? Like a spitting image of Odin whenever we see him coming out of the dragon form. And so all of that's about to take place here with the next couple chapters. I just really... And then, of course, when it comes to the Orochi thing, Orochi's back. At first, I was like, why? But the more I thought about it, obviously, Denjiro hasn't been around for a long time. Denjiro comes in, that finishes that plot line with Denjiro and Hiyori. Of course, that's been connected for a very long time from the beginning of this arc, right? Going back to the beginning of Act 2, when we had those moments with Denjiro and Hiyori with Orochi. So we could have a parallel of chapter, what was that, 932 or 933? I think it was 932. Whenever Komurasaki, when she was known as Komurasaki at the time, was cut by Denjiro. So now we could have a moment to where we could get a double-page spread kind of like that, where Denjiro comes in and delivers the final blow to Orochi. or Hiyori and Denjiro deliver the final blow to Orochi. You know, that's definitely a possibility. We could see that happening very, very soon. As a matter of fact, we could see all three of those happen at the same time, to where the end of this arc has Denjiro and Hiyori cutting off Orochi for the final time, ending him. Then we have Momonosuke safely bringing down Onigashima for everyone to see, while Luffy defeats Kaido and the dawn rises. All three of them happening at around the same time. That's most certainly a big possibility. Now, finishing this off with Luffy versus Kaido, I'm very curious on how Oda's going to handle the end of this fight, because this fight has been so magnificent. I don't know how you end it. Do you end it in a grand spectacle of a scene, right? Like where with Crocodile, with Lucci, with Enel, everyone saw those take place in terms of when they were defeated. The people who needed to see that saw it. The people who needed to see that saw it. The opportunity that presents itself here with this particular battle is that if Luffy and Kaido do land down at the Flower Capital and that punch does not finish off Kaido, because you gotta think about it like this, that punch is gonna land, it's gonna send Kaido through Onigashima down into the Flower Capital, right? And so this is gonna be this is a larger height than whenever he jumped off from from one of the Sky Islands with the Rouge back in chapter 795. So this is going to be and he's going to be receiving a punch with Conqueror's Coding, the biggest punch you've ever seen. And so with that being said, that is going to be expected to finish off Kaido, and it very well could. But what about a scenario to do something different this time around, to where they both land in the Flower Capital, right? They both land in the Flower Capital. And rather than everyone just seeing the end of the fight, Luffy versus Kaido finishes for everyone to see. Everyone is going to see Momonosuke holding up Onigashima and Luffy boxing Kaido. To where now, for everyone, in front of everyone's eyes, is going to be Luffy and Kaido boxing. And they will see who wins for the first time in this series. For the first time in this series. And for a battle of this magnitude, we'll see the actual end with an audience surrounding them, which is a first and would be crazy. Because the important thing about Luffy finishing off an enemy is the people who see it. The people who see it, so they receive that moment of, oh, he did it. You know, like, oh, he actually did fulfill what he was going to do. What better way than for the people of the Flower Capital, regardless of how Oda does it, regardless of whether he shows it through in the sky, with Kaido falling down into Flower Capital and Luffy in the air, maybe in the Nika pose, and like, oh my goodness, he did it. Or we have them both boxing in the Flower Capital, and then we have a scenario to where we see the whole final round with the entire audience surrounding them. And they see who comes out on top with the dawn rising in the background. There's a lot of possibilities. There's a lot of possibilities, but I look forward to seeing what all of you have to say about all of that in the comment section down below. This week's chapter was a Kaido fest, right? It was really awesome for Kaido and for Momonosuke. Really good stuff there. I love the dialogue with Hyogoro, having a moment to where all of them just could really settle down and be like, you know what? We would much rather die here believing in the go with the coat than ever go back to being Kaido's slaves ever again. And I love that so much, because it's like we would rather die in a blaze of glory than ever go back to being slaves. And it was such a great moment for all of the individuals there, because we know they meant that from the bottom of their hearts, man. And that was a great moment. And now we have Luffy. Crazy. I mean, we've had some crazy Luffy panels, but that's one of the craziest, man. Like, him with the massive fist holding, and what I love so much about it is that he's making sure that Kaido does not dodge this one, because he's holding on to him. And so he's holding on to him with one hand, and he's about to come down with his fist, so he cannot dodge this. And that's going to be exciting to see Kaido tank one of these, right? If he does. If this isn't the final blow, Kaido tanking something like this would be so amazing. Because they would be like, what else do I have to do to bring this guy down? And then you have that final round between the two. Now, that's just what I would love to see. But of course, Oda's probably going to break our ankles and give us something entirely different. We'll see what happens. But just keep an eye out, because I believe next chapter comes out. It's supposed to come out in 2 weeks. But because it's a Golden Week chapter, we normally get those a little earlier. And so we could get this next chapter next week and then have a 2-week break after that. for the next chapter to officially release. And so keep an eye out. Hopefully no one gets, especially if this next chapter ends the fight, hopefully we all stay spoiler free on that as possible, right? But we'll see what happens. I think it's safe to say at this point the fight could end on 1050. Because when we look at it, if it's going down the route that I was talking about, where if Luffy finishes the punch, if Luffy finishes Kaido with this punch, it's ending this chapter. But if he doesn't, then we could have this 3-chapter stretch of moments dedicated, as Luffy and Kaido are boxing in the Flower Capital, we have moments dedicated to Hiyori, Denjiro, and Orochi. Another chapter dedicated to Momonosuke, holding the Flower Capital, everybody cheering him on. And then final one, potentially 1050, with Luffy and Kaido's final round as they finish it. Dawn rises, Wano Bam. Peak fiction. We'll see what happens. Like I said, ankle-breaking Oda comes in with his Hall of Fame ankle breaker, and we can't predict him. But all of these scenarios and all these possibilities are extremely exciting, right? And there's always the possibility, shout out to Mr. Morge, that all of this fails. You know what I mean? That all of this fails. That's, even though I've always been on the train that Luffy will defeat Kaido, that is a possibility to entertain as well, just knowing the type of writer that Oda is. And so we'll see what happens. I'll see y'all next time. Let me know what y'all think about these possibilities and your own possibilities in the comment section down below. And I will see y'all for whenever next chapter drops. If it drops this upcoming, if we get nothing this upcoming week, then we'll do like a stream predictions for the upcoming content. But if not, if it does come out this week, then I'll see y'all for the next chapter of the awesome sauce of the best-selling manga in history. Let's go, man. Kaido and Luffy are going in. And shout out to Momonosuke, yo. Such an awesome character.